Hello all, Rick here with a question. What was Starfleet like in the 26th century? Well, more accurately, what could it be like? This video is going to draw on extensive apocryphal content which I don't really consider in conflict with anything because, well, it's a future date that was only referenced when it was in flux from the temporal Cold War and the interference of one of those factions. Nevertheless, although events are subject to change, we can get a good idea, or at least some fun speculation out of it, and who knows, I might be able to redo this series for different eras of Star Trek and the United Federation of Planets. But to save time, I'm also not going to rehash the entire structure of the Federation, Starfleet and its member worlds as they are, so I can just get on comparing the potential future versions with the ones we're familiar with. The most prominent event in this time is the infamous Battle of Procyon 5, which I have covered in its own video. However, that conflict takes place supposedly around 2554 in the Andoria system, on the UFP's doorstep, and it represents one of the pivotal moments in the rules of time travel. This moment was visited by Captain Jonathan Archer and Agent Daniels of the Time Agency, as a visual portrayal of what would happen if the Xindi were not stopped, and considering they were, who knows how the battle will unfold now in the Prime timeline. According to Daniels, it still will, although I'm unsure if Archer's foreknowledge of this event would be in any records. Starfleet was of course still very much active in this time, and had begun its forays into exploring time as well as space. Presumably they were nearing a completed exploration of the Milky Way galaxy too. I come to this conclusion from the reveal of the USS Enterprise NCC-1701J, which was their flagship vessel, and termed the Universe class. The Galaxy class starship of the 2360s was so called because it was ambitiously the operation level of that ship. While that vessel never made it to explore the other ends of the galaxy, its long-term deep space missions were effectively gearing up for that sort of thing. And if we look at Starfleet's current rate of growth, they're beginning to develop vessels like the Protostar and Dauntless that utilise faster than warp travel by the 25th century. So I suspect we'd see Starfleet expand into the unknown edges, retracing Voyager's steps for a start, and hopefully getting some treaty with the Dominion of the Gamma Quadrant to explore out that way too. This would lead to the ambitiously named Universe class. Just as the Galaxy class came when the Federation was all but done mapping the Alpha and Beta quadrants, the Universe class arrived with the namesake hinting at its supposed scale of exploration: extragalactic missions. These colossal vessels are, so far, the biggest Starfleet has ever constructed. City-station levels, designed to operate on their own out in the unknown reaches of deep space. Entire societies could exist on these vessels, yet in the further future we see that ships have shrunken again in scale, and frankly that makes sense. You only make a ship this big with a purpose. Assignments aboard this kind of ship would likely be long and not for the faint of heart. However, with the scale of the thing, complete facilities were available for an entire civilian infrastructure, so you could at least move there with a family. Outside of the Universe class, there were several other ships introduced in Star Trek Online, which were supposed to be the more typical vessels that you would encounter from Starfleet, but they all share that strange organic look. This smooth change in design was down to the method of construction, where Starfleet is said to be constructing its hulls by growing them. Some form of early programmable matter, akin to the kind we see in the 32nd century, was a vital part of ship construction. Internally, it was now common to use transporters, however turbolifts were still present, so no Discovery-style beaming everywhere between steps. The four vessels introduced beyond this were the Theseus, Nautilus, Sagittarius and Paladin temporal starships. These flat vessels cut a narrow profile, hinting at stronger construction methods employed, and they share that core yellow glow that we see on the Universe class. I assume this is some form of temporal core, as most of these ships were capable of two unique features: time travel and molecular reconstruction. Time travel is easily accomplished in Star Trek through numerous methods, and even some accidental ones, but these vessels had their own systems to allow this, but it was a rarity. Instead, much of this temporal core was supplied to their phaser arrays, which were infused with chronotons so that various time-related effects could be applied to their targets and even the firing vessel. The molecular reconstruction essentially allowed for a hull to be adjusted on the fly, allowing for the better navigation of hazards, shifting of surface systems, effectively healing damage, and to alter its composition to be transparent for the view. The Theseus was an escort with a focus on intercepting and responding to threats, taking on the role of ships like the Defiant or Akira in this time. The Nautilus is a science vessel and the next stage of the spherical ships like the Daedalus or Olympic class, and it housed a lot of Borg technology. I'll get back to that. The Sagittarius class is a large 4-nacelle ship, continuing on with vessels like the Constellation and Sagan, but it was more like the former. This vessel was less science vessel and more of a heavy-duty utility craft and workhorse, with combat prowess. Finally, we have the Paladin class, which is a speedy ship, I guess filling in that niche of a rapid responder and scout. Looking at these ships, we can see that Starfleet is still in a recognisable form. However, the only temporal agents we ever encounter in the series are from the 29th century onwards, which suggests that although Starfleet was experimenting with routine temporal technologies in the 26th century, they were not avidly delving into history, nor maintaining it any more than the Temporal Prime Directive demanded, or at least they were better at sticking to it, despite becoming embroiled in the Temporal War. It's likely that they left most of the policing of time to their future Time Fleet division, which are the ones like the USS Relativity and Captain Braxton. Starfleet was far from on its own too when beginning to flirt with time travel. The Klingons and Romulans also developed their own vessels to do this. However, the political makeup of the 2500s is very different. Both Klingons and Romulans are known to be extensively involved in the Federation, perhaps even established as member nations? Well, maybe not the Klingons, but we learn for certain that the Romulans are on the path for unification with the Vulcans, considering the path that Spock set them down was completed for centuries by the 32nd century. So, if the Romulans settled back on Vulcan, that would make them easily joining members of the UFP, considering their cousins' status. I think by this time it's feasible to see some form of Romulan government made from the Unificationists returned to Vulcan. Additionally, we learn that there are Xindi crew on the Enterprise J, which is not surprising as they were joining Starfleet as early as the late 24th century after they spent a few hundred years getting their own crap together. So, the Borg are still around, apparently? Well, possibly. Who knows if Picard Series 3 actually took them all out, but even if it did, we have the wholly separate collective set up by the Jurati Queen, which appears to be in alliance with the Federation, if not a member power. Speaking of old contacts of Picard, the end of this era is also the last time the Q Continuum contacts the Federation, at least noticeably. Perhaps that means that their trial is finally completed? At least they take a step back when involving themselves. Back in the original series, the Kelvin Empire was encountered by Captain Kirk, who managed to turn a hostile takeover of his ship into an opportunity for cooperation and contact by sending a message probe to the Andromeda Galaxy. In the late 26th century, it arrived, and the Kelvin Empire responded, still searching for a home and perturbed that their vanguard had seemingly gone soft. However, Commander Rojan, still alive at this time, killed the dispatched Kelvin investigator and continued to formalise a peace treaty between the Kelvin Empire of the Andromeda Galaxy and the United Federation of Planets, Plans to relocate his people hopefully continued on at a much more rapid pace now that Rojan had access once more to a Kelvin ship, which could cross that distance at a much faster rate than Starfleet, even with all their advances. I imagine the Kelvin Empire stepping into that role that the Klingons used to occupy, the potential adversary with a combat-first mindset, but one that could benefit from a Federation alliance. We also have the conman Berlinghoff Rasmussen, who appears with technology from this era. However, I leave him for last as the majority of his equipment is ill-gotten and contaminated from multiple other times, so everything he did is suspect. Additionally, only his ship was from the 26th century, and we don't even know who made it, so it might not even be a Federation origin. Overall, it appears that the Federation was expanding, still approaching a true galactic power that rivaled some of the older civilizations' scale, with strong alliances to the Klingons, free Borg, and potentially even had absorbed the Romulans into its structure. Their vessels were experimenting with time travel on a fleet-wide scale, and it seems to be adhering pretty strongly to the Temporal Prime Directive while leaving the actual policing of time to its own future institutions. In other technologies, warp drive would still be present, but new methods were likely the norm by now, and the Milky Way was well on its way to being fully scouted and mapped out, at least in an overview. Starfleet's eyes were thus turning outwards, beyond the galactic barrier to an intergalactic level of exploration, and even constructing vessels with that goal in mind. Aiding this might even be an alliance with the Andromeda Galaxy's Kelvin Empire, as the Federation began to expand its views of that final frontier. It's a transitional period for the most part, with the UFP yet to become fully invested in protecting time, but they are rapidly shrinking the galaxy with political alliances and newer technologies. The only real threat seeming to be the Sphere Builders, which were technically a problem from beyond their time anyway. So there we go. It's broad strokes, after all 100 years is a long time, and there's going to be a lot more we have yet to see. But I hope this paints a picture of where the Federation and Starfleet likely ends up based on what little is revealed in canon. Of course, until this era is a routine visit for a series, we're not going to really know either way, but it's interesting to speculate and analyse. Until the next video, I've been Rick. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.